Hard Ticket to Hawaii may well be the first 6 out of 5 movie I have ever reviewed on this channel, and possibly the greatest B-movie of all time. Don't get me wrong, everything here is terrible. The plot, the dialogue, the acting, the action scenes, and especially the sex scenes are all off the scale awful. But when added together as a whole, I don't think as a connoisseur of bad movies, I've seen a more hilariously entertaining one. But before we take each of those aspects in turn, we can't review this film without having a little bit of a biography of the legendary director and writer of this film, Andy Sidaris, for reasons that will maybe explain why this movie is the way it is. Unusually for a B-movie director, or a movie director in general, Sidaris actually started out in sports. More specifically, he worked in sportscasting as a director for Wide World of Sports, the Olympics, American football and basketball in the main. As he himself once said in an interview, "I was the best television director that ever lived, and helped develop techniques that are standard today, including instant replay, slow motion replay and split screen views." He also invented the honey shot. You know, the shot where a lull in play occurs and then suddenly the camera zooms in on a cheerleader or a beautiful woman in the crowd. As he himself once said, "Once you've seen one huddle, you've seen them all. So you either look at the popcorn, the guys or the ladies, the choice is clear to me." He was hugely successful as a sportscasting director, even going on to win an Emmy for his work on the 1968 Olympics. After a brief foray into directing episodes of more dramatic television in the 1970s, in the mid-80s he made the jump to films, more specifically a certain style of action film that focused on using large-breasted, gun-toting Playboy playmates and penthouse pets, which he called the Triple B series, short for Bullets, Bombs and Babes, or alternatively, Bullets, Bombs and Boobs. This series consists of 12 films starting with 1985's Malibu Express, whose poster makes an appearance in today's film, and ending with 1998's Lethal Return to Savage Beach. Today's film is the second in the series and was released in 1987. So let's just jump into reviewing the plot of Hard Ticket to Hawaii before we go on to touch on the other aspects that make this film an absolute classic. Calling Hard Ticket to Hawaii's plot a cohesive narrative would probably be being generous, but there are two definite plot threads that weave their way through the majority of this film. Plot A is introduced when these two cops stumble across a massive drug operation and are mercilessly gunned down. We are then introduced to our two protagonists, who I thought until the very last scene are both agents for the Agency, a Secret Service crime-fighting organisation that features in all of the Triple B series, but no, the smaller-breasted one is in fact just a civilian. And honestly, I could be entirely wrong even about that, as I had real trouble distinguishing between the characters, as all of the actresses are cookie-cutter big-boobed blondes. We also get this guy, who is the chief bad guy. He uses a remote control helicopter to transport diamonds to the island from his boat. Now I may well just be having an off day, but I didn't connect the dots between the drugs and the diamonds until about halfway through the 100-minute runtime, and thought that these were two disparate plot threads, one of which, namely the drugs, the plot just forgot about. But no, fun fact, the diamonds were to pay for the drugs, but honestly, that's not really made clear until fairly late into the piece. Which brings us to this guy, Seth Romero, who is a secondary bad guy leader, but also operates as more of an antagonist than the actual main bad guy ever does, seeing as that guy only appears twice. Romero is trying to recover the diamonds as the RC helicopter landed right next to our two agents, who of course took them. This back and forth between the agents and the bad guy and his various henchmen, plus other agents for the Agency, none of which I could say had a single iota of character development or a character beyond being extremely good looking, is what fuels the narrative in the main. The B plot revolves around a snake that is infected with toxins from cancer-infected rats. which is, as everyone knows, a combination of words that makes snakes incredibly murderous. The snake is random and doesn't really add much to the story by eating two honeymooners. It merely exists, I suspect, because they had a snake prop handy. To call the plot of Hard Ticket to Hawaii a story is to use the term in its loosest sense, as Sidaris himself once said. My wife Arlene uses all these fancy words like motivation and story. Where the F did you learn those words? I couldn't spell story if you spotted me the S and the T, for Christ's sakes. I have an idea in my head of locations, and I kind of know who I want to cast. He isn't lying, but to be fair to him, the plot isn't terrible. As it moves along at a fair pace, he also rather hilariously remembers to constantly set up things that pay off later, even though the payoff is often nonsensical. Never more so than with the snake's final demise, which gets so much setup and build up. You are thinking to yourself, this best be worth it, and oh god, it is even more glorious than I could have imagined, as it literally explodes from a toilet, bites and kills the main bad guy right before one of the guy agents on a motorbike bursts through the wall and uses a bazooka on it. And literally all of this was set up, and is still incredibly nonsensical. The plot creates a bunch of opportunities for action, in other words, which is the next facet of this flick we will look at. The action scenes in Hard Ticket to Hawaii swing wildly from terrible kung fu to good lord, did that just happen, and fits of uncontrollable laughter as a result. A lot of the action scenes are bad, as in really badly choreographed kung fu, or shootouts where people just miss each other and shoot very handily placed objects instead. Hell, we even get a woman flying around in a microlight dropping grenades on, well, her own friends at worst, and nothing at best. It's explosions for explosion's sake, and they're hilarious as a result. Then there are the, I think, intentionally humorous action scenes like this one, where an armed guard just stops guarding things, puts his gun down to play frisbee. He of course dies horribly when the frisbee is swapped out for a razor blade laden one. The last kind of action scenes are, well, this.
Man, he must be smoking some heavy doobie. Got a gun!
Yes. You just witnessed a man skateboard via his hands, then use a sex doll as a shield, right before he was run over and bazookaed to death. I don't think I've laughed as hard at a scene in years. Talking about laughing, let's move on to the next section of this review, the dialogue, which is hilariously bad. The dialogue falls into two distinct categories, intentionally funny and unintentionally hilarious. Here's a quick snippet of some of my favourite intentionally funny lines, because I just could not do these justice with words.
If brains were birchen, you'd have a clean cage.
It's got 4 inches. 4 inches? That's not so hot. Yes, it is. I measured him from the ground up.
For every intentionally funny line, there are maybe 4 or 5 unintentionally funny ones, and they're even funnier as a result. So here are my favourites.
Let's unload and hit the jacuzzi. I do my best thinking there.
You practically raped me last night.
That was last night, Charlotte. This is today.
Have no mercy. Kill them all.
These, of course, either being goofy-ass things to say, or the delivery so bad, it makes an entirely ordinary line hilarious. Either way, between the action and the dialogue, you are never more than about 5 minutes away from laughing your ass off at something. And between laughs, well, you're probably going to be looking at titties. So let's move on to the next section of this review, the sexy scenes. Sidaris, when asked about his approach to nudity and sex scenes in his movies, replied, "I just throw them in wherever it's convenient." Well, it turns out it is convenient to throw boobies on screen all the time. I took a note of this. It takes 1 minute and 48 seconds to see your first breasts. You've seen 2 pairs after 8 minutes, and by the end, well, I'd lost count of how many different pairs of titties I'd seen, but it was certainly more than 5. Here's the weirdest thing, there are only 2 sex scenes. Every other topless scene are wardrobe changes, shower change scenes, or in this case, our 2 main agents get in a jacuzzi. Let's not forget, it's where they do their best thinking, of course, topless together, and then never turn the damn thing on. And as for those sex scenes, well, sex on the beach. And the other one is even played off as a joke within the film. In other words, there's nothing much sexy about any of this. Much like the explosions, it's boobs for boobs' sake, and again, I'm totally here for it. Of course, it's not surprising there's a whole lot of nudity in this film, seeing as 90% of the cast are Playboy Playmates, which brings me to the last section of this review, the acting. I'm just going to throw this out there, but the Playmates in this aren't actually that bad, I didn't think. Donna Spear and Hope Marie Carlton in the lead roles at least deliver their lines without ever appearing to be reading them off cue cards. I've seen way worse performances from Playmates in various other B-movies and not so B-movies. I'm obviously looking at you, Pamela Anderson and Cameron Electra. This is in deep contrast to the male actors who are uniformly atrocious. The 2 male agents deliver all of their lines either in a way over the top delivery or just a tone that doesn't match the situation and or line. The worst, however, has to be Rodrigo Obregon as Seth Romero, the chief drug dealer. He seemingly hasn't met a line that he wants to deliver without it sounding like he's reading it for the very first time. And he's only doing 1 reading, so you better be rolling those damn cameras, baby. Either way, the acting is the crowning glory of this absolute B-movie classic. So that was Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Objectively, terrible. Subjectively, the best goddamn movie I've ever covered on this channel. If you are a fan of bad movies, then you are gonna love this. If you aren't a fan of them, then you'll hate it, and how the hell have you made it this far into this review? Seeing as you have, how about you like, comment and subscribe, because next week I'll be reviewing Near Dark. A way better movie than this. But not subjectively, because this is the best goddamn movie I've ever seen.